The stars looked peaceful through the window of the exploration ship Horizon. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, watching the distant lights with a sense of wonder that never faded. 15 years had passed since humanity made first contact with alien life, and every day still felt like a miracle. "Commander, we're picking up something strange," said Lieutenant Danny Price from the communication station. His young face showed confusion as he adjusted his headset. "It's a distress signal, but it's old. Maybe 3 weeks old." Jake walked over to look at the readings. The signal came from a Valorian colony world called Haven's Rest. The Valorians were one of humanity's favorite species in the galaxy. They were gentle, artistic people who loved music and philosophy. They had welcomed humans with open arms when Earth joined the galactic community. "Set a course," Jake ordered. "Maximum speed." The Horizon moved through space, its engines pushing hard. Jake felt uneasy. 3 weeks was a long time for a distress signal to go unanswered. The galactic community had protocols for this. Someone should have responded immediately. Dr. Linda Hayes joined him on the bridge. She was the ship's expert on alien biology, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a careful mind. "Do we know what happened?" she asked. "Not yet," Jake said. "But I don't like it. The Valorians are peaceful. They don't have enemies." 2 days later, the Horizon dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Haven's Rest. The planet looked normal from orbit, blue and green with white clouds swirling across the surface. The colony's main city was visible on the largest continent. "Scanning now," said Danny. He worked quietly for a moment, then his face went pale. "Commander, I'm not picking up any life signs." Jake felt his stomach drop. "None at all?" "Nothing. The buildings are intact. Power systems are still running. But there's no one down there." The colony had 40,000 Valorians. "They're all gone." The bridge went silent. Jake looked at Linda, who stared at the planet with growing horror. "Prepare a landing team," he said quietly. "Full protective gear. We need to know what happened." The shuttle descended through clear skies. The colony looked perfect from above. Streets laid out in artistic patterns. Buildings designed to blend with nature, parks and gardens everywhere. The Valorians loved beauty in all things, but when the shuttle landed in the central plaza, they found the first bodies. Jake had seen death before. He served in Earth's military before joining the Exploration Corps. But this was different. A Valorian lay sprawled on the ground near a fountain, their forearms frozen in a gesture of fear. Their large eyes were still open, staring at nothing. "Spread out," Jake ordered his team. "Document everything. Stay in contact." They moved through the city in pairs. The bodies were everywhere. In homes, in the streets, in the schools and hospitals. Every Valorian was dead. Men, women, children. All of them killed where they stood or fell. Linda examined the bodies with her medical scanner. Her hands shook as she worked. "Jake, you need to see this," she called out. He joined her in what looked like a community center. 20 Valorians lay on the floor in a circle. Linda's scanner showed detailed readings of their last moments. "They were tortured," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Look at these marks. Chemical burns, surgical cuts, evidence of repeated trauma. Someone did experiments on them while they were alive." Jake felt rage building in his chest. "How long did it take?" "Hours for each of them. Whoever did this wasn't in a hurry. They took their time. They found worse things as they explored. A school where children died at their desks. A hospital where patients were killed in their beds. The colony's cultural center had been deliberately destroyed, centuries-old artwork burned and broken. But the most damning evidence came from the colony's data center. The Valorians kept detailed records of everything. The last entries told the story. Jake watched the final recording on a recovered datapad. A Valorian administrator spoke calmly to the camera, even as explosions sounded in the background. "This is Colonial Administrator Venn speaking my final words. The Krell Dominion arrived 6 days ago. They demanded we surrender the colony and leave within 2 days. We tried to negotiate. We offered them resources, trade agreements, anything to avoid conflict. They refused all offers. They said our species was too weak to deserve this world. When we couldn't evacuate everyone in time, they began systematic elimination. They started with the young and the elderly. They're recording their actions, celebrating them. If anyone finds this, please tell our people we died with dignity. Tell them we never stopped believing in peace. Tell them." The recording cut off with the sound of weapons fire. Jake played the next file. It was Krell military footage, their own recording of the massacre. The Krell were large reptilian creatures with cold eyes and powerful bodies. The video showed them moving through the streets, killing efficiently and without mercy. Some recordings showed Valorian prisoners being subjected to what the Krell called scientific study. The narration was in the Krell language, but the translation was clear enough. They were proud of their work. Danny found more evidence in the military logs. Commander, the Krell sent reports back to their command. This was an official military operation. They classified it as territorial acquisition and resource liberation. They killed 40,000 people for minerals and a good location. Jake felt sick. He gathered his team back at the shuttle. They had collected enough evidence. Bodies, recordings, data files, everything needed to prove what happened. What do we do now? Asked Lieutenant Sarah Chen, one of the security officers. She looked young and lost, her confidence shaken by what they had seen. We go back to Earth, Jake said. We show them what happened here. We show the whole galaxy what the Krell did. The flight back to the horizon was silent. Jake sat in the pilot's seat, his mind racing. Humanity had joined the galactic community with such hope. They thought they were entering a civilized society, a place where species worked together and resolved conflicts peacefully. Earth had cleaned up its own act, ended its wars, unified its governments. They thought other species had done the same. Linda sat beside him. The galaxy knew, she said quietly. This didn't just happen. The Krell have been out here for centuries. Other species must have seen them do this before. Then why didn't anyone stop them? Jake asked. Because stopping them would be hard. Because the Krell are strong. Because it's easier to look away. Back on the horizon, Jake composed his report to Earth Command. He attached every file, every recording, every piece of evidence. He wrote carefully, knowing his words would reach the highest levels of government. 40,000 Valorians are dead. They died begging for mercy from people who laughed at their pain. They died because they were weak and someone stronger wanted what they had. The Krell Dominion committed genocide for profit and pride. This is the reality of the galaxy we joined. This is what happens when civilization is just a word without meaning. He paused, then added a final paragraph. We came to the stars thinking we left our violent past behind. We thought humanity's history of war and cruelty was something to be ashamed of, something that made us less than other species. We were wrong. Our history didn't make us monsters. It made us survivors. It taught us that evil exists and that someone has to stand against it. The question now is whether Earth will stand or look away like everyone else. Jake sent the report with a priority signal. It would reach Earth in 3 days. He walked to the observation deck and stared out at the stars. They didn't look peaceful anymore. They looked cold and indifferent, full of dangers humanity hadn't prepared for. Lieutenant Danny found him there an hour later. What do you think will happen? The young officer asked. Jake thought about the question. He thought about the Valorian children in their school, their artwork still on the walls. He thought about humanity's own history, the lessons learned in blood over thousands of years. He thought about the choice Earth would have to make. I think humanity is about to remember what it is, Jake finally said. For better or worse, the galaxy is going to learn something about us. We're not the innocent newcomers they thought we were. We're not the harmless species that smiles and nods and goes along with how things are. We're the species that survived ice ages and plagues and wars. We're the species that looked at our own capacity for evil and decided to fight it. Will we go to war? Danny asked. I don't know. But I know we won't do nothing. We can't, it's not in our nature. Jake turned from the window. Get some rest. When we get back, everything changes. The horizon continued its journey home, carrying evidence that would shake Earth to its core. Behind them, Haven's Rest remained silent, a tomb for 40,000 souls who believed peace would save them. Ahead, Earth waited, unaware that it was about to face a choice that would define humanity's place in the galaxy forever. The stars watched it all with indifference, but humanity was about to teach the galaxy that some species refuse to be indifferent. Some species remember their dead. Some species answer evil with justice, no matter the cost. The Galactic Council chamber was enormous, a curved space built to hold representatives from hundreds of different species. Admiral Frank Cooper stood in the human delegation area, his dress uniform perfectly pressed, his gray hair cut military short. Beside him, Ambassador Claire Bennett reviewed her notes one final time. Her hands were steady, but Frank could see the tension in her shoulders. They'll have to act, Claire said quietly. The evidence is overwhelming. 40,000 civilians murdered, It's genocide by any definition. Frank had less faith in the council, but he nodded. They had spent 3 weeks preparing for this moment. The evidence from Haven's Rest had shocked Earth to its core. Every news channel showed the footage. The president had called emergency sessions. The public demanded justice. Now it was time to see if the galaxy shared humanity's sense of right and wrong. The council leader, a being named High Speaker Vorin from the ancient Zolari species, called the session to order. His translator device rendered his clicking speech into perfect English. The council recognizes Earth delegation. You may present your case, Claire stepped forward. Holographic displays activated around the chamber, showing images from Haven's Rest. Dead Valorians in the streets, destroyed artwork, the school with children still at their desks, the recordings of torture, the Krell military footage celebrating their actions. She spoke clearly, her voice carrying through the massive space. What you see is genocide. The Krell Dominion systematically murdered 40,000 Valorian colonists. They did it slowly. They did it deliberately. They recorded it proudly. We have evidence of planning, execution, and celebration. We call on this council to condemn the Krell Dominion and bring those responsible to justice. The chamber filled with the sounds of translation devices working in hundreds of languages. Frank watched the other delegations carefully. Some looked shocked. Some looked uncomfortable. Some showed no reaction at all. The Krell ambassador stood. He was massive, nearly 8 feet tall, with scales that gleamed under the chamber lights. His voice was deep and confident. The humans show images but lack context. Haven's Rest was built on territory claimed by the Dominion. The Valorians were squatters who refused legal eviction. We acted within our sovereign rights to remove them. Claire's face went red. You call murder legal eviction? You tortured children. We followed appropriate protocols for territorial disputes, the Krell ambassador replied calmly. The Valorians had opportunities to relocate peacefully. They chose confrontation. The Dominion does not accept blame for their poor decisions. Frank wanted to punch something. The Krell was lying smoothly, twisting massacre into legal language. But what shocked him more was the reaction from other delegations. Many nodded along. Some whispered to each other but said nothing aloud. The Therian delegate spoke next. The Therians were wealthy traders, known for their vast merchant fleets. While the images are disturbing, the council must respect sovereign rights. Territorial disputes are complex. We cannot intervene in every internal matter. Internal matter, Claire's voice rose. They crossed space to kill people who couldn't fight back. That's not internal. That's invasion and murder. High Speaker Vorin's voice cut through the chamber. The human delegation will maintain decorum. This council operates on principles of non-interference and respect for sovereignty. We cannot impose human values on species with different cultural contexts. Frank felt something break inside him. He had served in Earth's military for 30 years. He fought in the last wars before unification. He had seen terrible things and done some himself, but he always believed there were lines that civilized beings didn't cross. The council was telling him those lines didn't exist out here. The session continued for hours. Claire presented more evidence. She showed Krell documents proving the massacre was planned months in advance. She showed communications where Krell officers joked about killing weak herbivores. She played the final words of the Valorian administrator begging for mercy. None of it mattered. Delegation after delegation stood to defend the Krell or call for further study of the situation. The Murgle Consortium worried about trade disruptions. The Heptari Union spoke about cultural sensitivity. The Voss Empire simply stated they saw no issue with stronger species expanding their territory. By the end of the session, Frank understood. The council knew what the Krell did. They had known for a long time. Other species had suffered similar fates. But the Krell were strong, their military powerful, their territory vast. No one wanted to challenge them. No one wanted to risk their own comfort and safety for people who were already dead. The council voted on a resolution. It expressed deep concern about the tragic loss of life at Haven's Rest. It requested the Krell Dominion conduct an internal investigation. It recommended both sides pursue mediation. The resolution passed easily. Claire stood frozen as the vote totals displayed. Frank put a hand on her shoulder. "Come on," he said quietly. "We're done here." They left the chamber and walked through the council building's corridors. Neither spoke until they reached the human delegation offices. Claire sank into a chair, her face pale. "They don't care," she said. We showed them everything. We proved genocide beyond any doubt, and they don't care. Frank poured 2 glasses of water and handed her one. They care about power and profit. The Krell have both. The Valorians had neither. That's all that matters to them. There has to be something we can do. Legal channels, trade pressure, something. There isn't. We just learned how the galaxy really works. Frank sat down heavily. Earth thought we were joining a community of civilized species. We thought everyone shared basic values about life and dignity. We were naive. Over the next few days, they tried anyway. Claire met with individual delegations arguing for action. A few species expressed private sympathy. The Valorians themselves seemed broken, too peaceful and traumatized to push for justice. But no one would support real consequences for the Krell. Frank attended a private gathering of military attachés. He thought surely the military officers would understand. Instead, he found casual acceptance of the massacre. A Murgal colonel actually laughed when Frank expressed outrage. "You humans are so emotional," the colonel said, his translator making his gurgling speech understandable. "Species die out here. It happens. The strong survive. The weak perish. This is nature." "This isn't nature," Frank said coldly. "This is murder. There's a difference, is there? Your species has quite the violent history, I understand. Wars, genocides, nuclear weapons. You killed millions of your own kind. Now you lecture us about morality?" Frank felt his temper rising. "We learned from those mistakes. We built laws and institutions to prevent them from happening again. We changed because we recognized we were wrong." The Murgal officer made a sound that might have been laughter. "How quaint. You think the galaxy operates on human principles. Let me educate you, Admiral. The Council maintains peace through balance of power. Strong species check each other. Weak species either find protection or disappear. The Valorians were weak and isolated. They disappeared. This maintains stability. That's not peace. That's just organized predation. Call it what you like. But if Earth wishes to remain in the Council's good graces, you'll learn to accept reality." Frank left the gathering early. He walked through the station where the Council met, looking at the representatives of hundreds of species. They all looked so different, but he realized they shared something in common. They had survived by being smart, being strong, or being useful to someone stronger. Morality was a luxury they couldn't afford. Claire found him in an observation deck staring out at the stars. "I've been recalled to Earth," she said. "The President wants a full report. You too. What will you tell them?" She stood beside him, her reflection visible in the window. "The truth. The galaxy isn't what we hoped. The Council protects the powerful and abandons the weak. If we want justice for Haven's Rest, we'll have to get it ourselves. That could mean war. I know. But what's the alternative? We watch it happen again? We become like them, calculating which atrocities to ignore?" Claire's voice hardened. "We came to the stars believing in something better. Maybe that was stupid. But I'd rather be stupid and right than smart and complicit." The flight back to Earth took 2 weeks. Frank spent the time writing his report and thinking about what came next. Earth had built its exploration fleet on optimism, designed for discovery and peaceful contact. Those ships couldn't fight the Krell. If humanity decided to act, they would need something new. He thought about human history, about the wars Earth had fought. Humanity knew violence in ways these other species didn't. Humans fought each other for thousands of years, developing weapons and tactics to kill their own kind efficiently. Earth put all that aside when they unified and reached for the stars, but the knowledge remained. The capacity remained. Frank wondered if the galaxy understood what they were dismissing. Humans weren't just another weak species to be ignored. They were predators who chose to be peaceful. There was a difference between couldn't fight and wouldn't fight. When they reached Earth, crowds had gathered at the spaceport. News of the Council's response had leaked. People held signs demanding justice. Captain Ryan Blake stood on the bridge of the Darwin's Fury and watched the stars shift as his ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Around him, 29 other warships materialized in the darkness of space. The human fleet had arrived in Krell territory, and they had arrived ready for war. "All ships reporting ready status," said Lieutenant Kate Morrison from Communications. Her voice was calm and professional, but Ryan could hear the tension underneath. This was it. Everything Earth had built over the past 14 months came down to this moment. Ryan studied the tactical display. The Krell had no idea they were here. Human ships used new stealth technology developed specifically for this mission. The Krell still used sensors designed for the Council's style of warfare, where everyone announced their presence and followed engagement protocols. Humanity didn't plan to follow any protocols. Status on primary targets? Ryan asked. Commander Greg Palmer worked his tactical station with practiced efficiency. 3 shipyards in this system. They're the facilities that built the ships used at Haven's Rest. Also detecting 17 Krell military vessels, various classes. Civilian stations show normal activity. Good, remember the mission. We hit military and industrial targets only. No civilian casualties. We're not here to become what they are. The fleet moved silently through space. Ryan had spent months planning this operation with Admiral Cooper and the Joint Chiefs. They studied Krell tactics, technology, and psychology. More importantly, they studied Earth's own military history, looking at how humans fought each other during their most brutal conflicts. The galaxy fought wars like sports matches. Ships lined up, exchanged fire at range, followed rules about targeting and engagement. Honor and tradition mattered more than victory. Humanity had tried that approach once during the early industrial age. Then they learned total war. They learned to strike infrastructure, to cut supply lines, to attack the enemy's ability to fight rather than just fighting their military directly. Weapons free, Ryan ordered. Begin Operation Hammerfall. The Darwin's Fury and her sister ships opened fire simultaneously. Missiles streaked through space not at the Krell warships but at the shipyards. The facilities were enormous structures designed to build the large vessels the Krell used for their military operations. Each yard had cost decades of effort and massive resources to construct. The missiles hit with devastating precision. Explosions bloomed across the shipyards as critical systems failed. Construction bays collapsed. Power cores overloaded. In 15 seconds, the Krell lost their ability to replace the ships they were about to lose. Alarms shrieked across the Krell command channels. Ryan's communications team had cracked their encryption weeks ago. He heard the panic in their voices as they tried to understand what was happening. Unknown contacts. Multiple vessels. Shipyard 3 is gone. Total loss. Who is attacking us? Ryan opened a channel on all Krell military frequencies. This is Captain Ryan Blake of the Earth Defense Fleet. You are under attack for crimes against sentient life. The massacre at Haven's Rest has been answered. Surrender now or be destroyed. The response came from the Krell commander, his translator device making his angry hisses understandable. Humans, you dare attack the Dominion? We will crush your primitive fleet. You can try, Ryan said calmly and cut the channel. The Krell warships moved to engage, arranging themselves in their traditional battle formation. They expected the humans to do the same, to follow the standard rules of engagement used throughout the galaxy. Instead, the human fleet split into smaller groups and attacked from multiple angles simultaneously. The Krell had bigger ships with more powerful weapons. But their doctrine was rigid, built on centuries of fighting opponents who valued honor over effectiveness. Humanity had no such limitations. Target their sensors, Ryan ordered. Blind them first. Electronic warfare systems activated across the human fleet. Sophisticated jamming overwhelmed Krell communications. Cyber attacks infiltrated their targeting computers. Within minutes, the Krell fleet was scattered and confused, their ships unable to coordinate effectively. Then the human ships closed in. The battle was brutal and efficient. Human vessels used hit-and-run tactics, striking from unexpected angles and retreating before the Krell could respond effectively. Kinetic weapons punched through Krell armor at close range. Missiles exploited weaknesses in their shield configurations that Earth's intelligence had identified. Commander Greg Palmer's voice cut through the combat chatter. Krell flagship is trying to retreat. They're heading for the jump point. Ryan checked the tactical display. The Krell commander had realized this wasn't a battle he could win. He was running, leaving his subordinate ships to die while he escaped. Cut him off. I want that ship disabled and the crew taken alive. 3 human frigates moved to intercept. They targeted the flagship's engines with surgical precision, crippling the vessel without destroying it. The massive Krell ship drifted helplessly in space. Prepare boarding teams, Ryan ordered. Colonel Peterson, you're up. Colonel Amy Peterson had been waiting for this order. She commanded 200 Marines specially trained for hostile boarding operations. Her voice crackled over the communication channel. Understood. We're going in. The boarding craft launched from the assault carrier, crossing the distance to the disabled Krell flagship in minutes. Amy stood in the lead craft, her Marines arranged around her. They wore powered armor designed for combat in confined spaces. Unlike the elaborate ceremonial armor many Galactic Marines used, human combat gear was purely functional. "Remember your training," she told her troops. "We're taking prisoners, not killing everyone we see. Anyone who surrenders is to be detained safely. Anyone who resists gets put down hard." Questions? There were none. The boarding craft latched onto the Krell hull and cutting tools began opening entry points. Atmosphere vented into space as the humans forced their way inside. The Krell crew tried to resist. They were large and strong, trained warriors in their own right. But they had never faced humans in close-quarters combat. Amy's Marines moved through the ship with devastating efficiency, using tactics developed in thousands of years of human warfare. Flashbangs disoriented defenders. Suppressing fire pinned them down. Coordinated team movements overwhelmed resistance. Amy found the Krell commander on the bridge, surrounded by his officers. He was enormous, his scales marked with battle scars. He raised his weapon, a plasma rifle designed for his massive frame. "Put it down," Amy ordered, her own weapon trained on his center mass. "You've lost. Surrender and you'll be treated according to military law." The Krell commander laughed, a harsh sound that his translator rendered as contempt. "You think you've won? The Dominion will crush your pathetic species. We've ruled this space for 3 centuries. You're nothing." "We're the species that showed up," Amy replied. "Everyone else looked away from what you did. We didn't. Now drop the weapon." For a moment it looked like the Krell would fight. Then he saw the dozen human Marines covering every angle, their weapons steady, their eyes cold. He lowered his rifle and let it clatter to the floor. "Smart choice," Amy said. She signaled her team to secure the prisoners. "Commander, the flagship is ours. Taking the crew into custody now." Back on the Darwin's Fury, Ryan watched the battle wind down. 11 Krell warships were destroyed. 6 more were disabled and being secured. The shipyards were completely destroyed. Krell military communications had collapsed into chaos as other bases tried to understand what happened. "Casualties?" Ryan asked. 3 ships damaged, none critically. 47 wounded, 2 killed in action. Kate Morrison reported. Her voice was steady, but Ryan saw her blinking back tears. 2 dead was too many. "Mark their names for honors," Ryan said quietly. "They died stopping genocide. That matters." He opened a channel to the entire Krell military network. This message would reach every base, every ship, every commander in the Dominion. He wanted them all to hear it. "This is Captain Ryan Blake. Your fleet has been destroyed. Your shipyards are gone. Your ability to commit genocide has been crippled. We've taken your commander and his officers alive. They will face trial for crimes against sentient beings." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "You called the Valorians weak. You mocked them for being peaceful. You thought strength meant the ability to kill without consequence. You were wrong. Real strength is choosing not to kill when you can. Real civilization is protecting those who cannot protect themselves. We are humanity. We don't murder civilians. We don't torture the helpless. We don't commit genocide. That's what separates soldiers from monsters." Ryan pulled up the footage from Haven's Rest, the recordings of dead Valorian children in their school. He broadcast it across every Krell channel. "You wanted the galaxy to fear you. You wanted everyone to know the Krell were strong and ruthless. Congratulations, you got our attention. But you made a critical mistake. You assumed we were weak because we were peaceful. You forgot that humans had to learn peace. We had to fight for it. We had to overcome our own violent nature. That means we understand violence in ways you never will." He leaned closer to the camera. "The galaxy thought humans came to the stars as innocent explorers. They thought we were naive and harmless." The Galactic Council chamber erupted in chaos the moment Ambassador Claire Bennett finished speaking. Representatives from dozens of species shouted over each other, their translator devices creating a cacophony of anger, fear, and indignation. High Speaker Voran tried to restore order, his clicking speech rising above the noise, but no one was listening. Claire stood at the human delegation podium, her expression calm despite the storm she had just created. Beside her, Admiral Frank Cooper watched the other species with cold satisfaction. "Let them rage." Earth had expected this. "The human delegation will withdraw its announcement immediately," demanded the Therian representative, his fins flaring with agitation. "You cannot claim jurisdiction over Krell citizens. You have no legal authority." Claire's voice cut through the noise. The Council had authority and refused to use it. You witnessed genocide and called it a territorial dispute. You had evidence and chose to ignore it. So Earth is establishing jurisdiction where none existed. We call it the Genocide Prevention Tribunal, and it will try the Krell officers we captured for crimes against sentient life. The Krell delegation, smaller now without their military leadership, stood in fury. The new Krell ambassador was a diplomat named Vorath, and his translator barely kept pace with his angry hissing. This is an act of war. You attack our military, capture our officers, and now claim the right to judge them. The Dominion will respond with total force. Frank spoke for the first time, his voice carrying the weight of military authority. Your Dominion tried total force. We destroyed 3 shipyards and 17 warships. Your fleet is crippled. Your commanders are in custody on Earth. If you want to continue this war, we're ready. But I'd suggest you think carefully about whether you want to see what else humanity is capable of. The chamber fell into shocked silence. The Krell were the dominant military power in their region of space. No one spoke to them this way. No one challenged them directly. Yet here were the humans, newcomers to the galaxy, threatening the Dominion with casual confidence. High Speaker Voran's voice emerged from the silence. The human delegation must understand the consequences of their actions. You are violating every protocol the Council has established. Species governance must be respected. Military intervention without Council approval is forbidden. If Earth continues this path, sanctions will follow. Trade agreements will be suspended. Diplomatic relations will be severed. You will be isolated. Claire had prepared for this moment. She pulled out a datapad and began reading names. The Valorians at Haven's Rest. The Daxon colonists at Brightwater. The Pelori traders at Station 7. The Mindri refugees at Safe Harbor. 17 different species, 43 separate incidents, over 200,000 dead. All at the hands of the Krell Dominion. All documented. All reported to this council. All ignored. She looked up at Voran. You want to talk about consequences? Let's talk about the consequences of your inaction. Let's talk about the species that no longer exist because the council valued peace over justice. Let's talk about the children who died begging for help that never came. She activated a holographic display. Images filled the chamber. Dead civilians from a dozen different species, destroyed colonies, burning ships. The evidence of Krell atrocities going back decades. Claire had spent months gathering it all, reaching out to species who had suffered and been ignored. Earth is done asking permission to do what's right, she continued. We're establishing the tribunal with or without council approval. Any species that wants true justice can join us. Any species tired of watching innocents die while politicians debate can stand with us. And any species that stands with genocide can be very clear where they stand. Over the next days, the political fallout was immense. The council formally condemned Earth's actions. Economic sanctions were proposed. Though getting all species to agree proved difficult. Some quietly supported what humanity did but wouldn't say so publicly. Others genuinely feared the precedent Earth was setting. But Claire's gambit worked. Species began reaching out to the human delegation privately. The Valorian, still mourning their losses, offered full support. 3 minor species who had suffered Krell attacks volunteered to testify. 2 major powers, the Kaldari Federation and the Nexus Assembly, sent diplomatic messages expressing interest in the tribunal concept. Back on Earth, preparations for the trial moved forward rapidly. A special facility was constructed in Geneva, the old Earth city where humanity once tried to build international justice. Judge Paul Martinez was selected to preside, a man with decades of experience in human courts and a reputation for fairness and thoroughness. Paul stood in the empty courtroom the day before the trial began, looking at the design. It was deliberately simple. No elaborate decorations, no symbolic grandeur. Just clean lines, proper lighting, and a layout that ensured everyone could see and hear clearly. Justice didn't need to be impressive. It needed to be thorough. Dr. Linda Hayes would serve as one of the key witnesses. She had examined the bodies at Haven's Rest and documented the evidence of torture and systematic killing. Now she sat in a conference room reviewing her testimony with the prosecution team. They're going to challenge every piece of evidence, the lead prosecutor warned her. He was a man named Victor Kane, selected for his experience with war crimes trials. They'll claim cultural differences, military necessity, legal authority. You need to be absolutely precise. Linda nodded. She had lived with the images from Haven's Rest for over a year now. The dead children haunted her dreams. She was ready to make sure their deaths meant something. The Krell prisoners arrived under heavy guard. 8 officers, including the fleet commander captured by Colonel Amy Peterson. They were housed in secure facilities designed to hold them safely but humanely. Earth was determined to show that justice and cruelty were not the same thing. Amy herself would testify about the capture and the prisoners' statements. She had recorded everything, followed every protocol. The defense would have no grounds to claim mistreatment. The trial began on a cold morning in March. Media from across Earth and the galaxy filled the observation areas. Hundreds of species watched the live broadcast, some in support, many in opposition, all in fascination. This was unprecedented. A relatively weak newcomer species was putting a galactic power on trial. Judge Martinez entered the courtroom and took his seat. He was a small man with gray hair and sharp eyes. His voice was calm and authoritative. This tribunal is convened under the authority of the Genocide Prevention Act, established by Earth and supporting species to address crimes against sentient life. We will proceed with fairness, thoroughness, and respect for all parties. The accused have been provided full legal representation and translation services. Does the prosecution wish to make an opening statement? Victor Kane stood. We do, Your Honor. The evidence will show that the accused planned and executed the systematic murder of 40,000 Valorian civilians at Haven's Rest Colony. This was not war. It was not self-defense. It was genocide, committed deliberately and proudly. We will prove intent, planning, execution, and celebration of these crimes. The defense attorney, a human woman named Lisa Harper, selected to ensure fairness, presented the Krell position. The defense will show that the accused were following legitimate military orders in a territorial dispute. The Valorians were warned repeatedly to evacuate. The Dominion acted within its legal rights under interstellar law as recognized by the Galactic Council. The trial proceeded with meticulous care. Victor called witnesses one by one. Commander Jake Morrison testified about finding the colony and the evidence of systematic killing. His voice remained steady as he described the school full of dead children, but his hands gripped the witness stand tightly. Linda Hayes presented the medical evidence. She displayed her findings on screens throughout the courtroom, explaining in clear terms how the victims died. The injuries show prolonged suffering. Many victims were subjected to procedures consistent with torture or experimentation. Death was not immediate or merciful. It was deliberate and cruel. The Krell defense attorney cross-examined aggressively. Dr. Hayes, you're not familiar with Krell physiology or psychology. How can you judge their methods by human standards? Linda's response was firm. Pain is pain. Fear is fear. I don't need to be Krell to understand that what was done to these victims caused immense suffering. The victims' own recordings confirm this. The prosecution played the recordings from Haven's Rest. The courtroom fell silent as the Valorian administrator's final words echoed through the space. Then they played the Krell military recordings, the ones where officers celebrated their kills and joked about the victims. Judge Martinez watched the Krell defendants throughout. They showed no remorse. Their posture suggested contempt rather than shame. The lead commander, when given the opportunity to speak, defended his actions proudly. We did our duty, he said through his translator. The weak have no rights. This is the law of nature and the law of the galaxy. The Council understands this even if these humans do not. Victor used this statement as the center of his case. The defendant, Admiral Jake Morrison, stood in the command center of the Genocide Prevention Fleet headquarters and studied the star map before him. 2 years had passed since humanity struck the Krell and established the tribunal. The map showed a galaxy divided in ways that would have been unthinkable 3 years ago. 23 species had signed the Genocide Prevention Accord, committing to intervene when mass atrocities occurred. The fleet under Jake's command represented humanity and 12 other species, with more considering joining. They had stopped 3 potential massacres in the past 18 months, arriving before the killing started, and forcing diplomatic solutions backed by military presence. But the map also showed the cost. 47 species had joined an opposing coalition called the Sovereignty Alliance, dedicated to resisting what they called human interference in galactic affairs. The Galactic Council was fractured and largely ineffective, split between factions. Trade routes had been disrupted. Diplomatic relationships had collapsed. The galaxy was more divided than it had been in centuries. Lieutenant Danny Price, promoted to commander and serving as Jake's operations officer, approached with the latest reports. "Sir, we have a situation developing in the outer reaches. The Vence Collective is moving forces toward a Pelori refugee settlement. Intelligence suggests they're planning forced relocation with likely civilian casualties." Jake felt the familiar weight settle on his shoulders. Another crisis. Another choice. "How many Pelori?" "Approximately 15,000. Mostly families who fled the last conflict." "Assemble Strike Group 7, we leave in 2 hours." Danny hesitated. "Sir, the Vensk are part of the Sovereignty Alliance. If we intervene, it could escalate the political situation. Then it escalates. I'm not letting 15,000 refugees get slaughtered because of politics." After Danny left, Jake stood alone in the command center. He thought about how much had changed since he found Haven's Rest. He had been a simple exploration captain then, eager to discover new worlds and meet new species. Now he commanded a military fleet engaged in a Cold War that occasionally turned hot. Back on Earth, the political situation was equally complex. Admiral Frank Cooper sat in a Senate hearing, facing hostile questions from politicians who believed Earth's aggressive stance was hurting humanity. Senator Grace Powell led the opposition. She was a woman in her 50s, intelligent and articulate, who represented a growing movement questioning Earth's role. "Admiral Cooper, since we established the Genocide Prevention Fleet, Earth's economy has contracted by 8%. We've lost trade agreements with 37 species. Our merchant fleet has been attacked 6 times. Young people are dying in conflicts that aren't ours. At what point do we admit this crusade is hurting humanity more than helping anyone?" Frank kept his composure. "Senator, we've prevented 3 massacres. That's 45,000 lives saved. We've established a coalition of species committed to protecting innocence. We've shown the galaxy that genocide has consequences. At what cost to Earth? To our own people? At the cost of knowing we stood up when it mattered. Senator, I've served in the military for 35 years. I've seen what happens when good people do nothing. Evil flourishes. The weak suffer. The strong exploit. Is that the galaxy you want? I want a galaxy where Earth prospers and our children don't die fighting other species' wars." Frank leaned forward. "With respect, Senator, that's exactly the attitude that allowed Haven's Rest to happen. Everyone wanted prosperity and safety for their own people. No one wanted to risk anything for strangers. 40,000 Valorians paid the price for that selfishness." The hearing continued for hours. Frank defended the policy, but he saw the doubt in many faces. The public was tired. The economic strain was real. Support for the Genocide Prevention Fleet was dropping in polls. That evening, he met with Ambassador Claire Bennett in a quiet restaurant in Washington. She looked exhausted, her hair grayer than it had been 2 years ago. "The president is getting pressure to scale back operations," she told him quietly. "Not abandon the tribunal or the fleet, but reduce our presence. Pick our battles more carefully. The opposition has momentum. We start picking and choosing which atrocities to stop, we become what we fought against," Frank said. "We become the council, making calculations about which lives matter." "I know. But Frank, the people are hurting. Trade is down. Prices are up. 300 Earth citizens have died in fleet operations. That senator wasn't wrong about the costs." Frank pushed his food around his plate. "When I was young, my grandfather told me about the world wars. He said the worst part wasn't the fighting. It was the years after, when everyone wanted to forget. When people who sacrificed were told they wasted their time. When the comfortable majority decided ideals weren't worth the cost." "Are you saying this is like Earth's world wars?" "I'm saying humanity has always struggled with this. We want to be good. We want to stand for something. But we also want comfort and safety. Those things don't always align." Across the galaxy, Captain Ryan Blake faced his own challenges. The Darwin's Fury was on patrol near the contested border with the Sovereignty Alliance when they received a distress call from a civilian transport under attack. "It's a Caldari merchant ship," reported his communications officer. "They're being fired on by Therian raiders. 3 vessels, all military grade." Ryan checked the tactical display. The Therians were part of the Sovereignty Alliance. Attacking them would create an incident. But the merchant ship had families aboard. Battle stations. Full speed to intercept. His second-in-command, Commander Lisa Grant, spoke quietly. "Captain, orders are to avoid engagement with Alliance forces unless absolutely necessary. People are dying right now. That makes it necessary. The Darwin's fury arrived as the merchant ship's shields failed. The Therian raiders scattered at the sight of a human warship, but not before firing a final salvo that crippled the transport. Ryan's crew worked for 6 hours to rescue the survivors. 43 Caldari were saved. 12 died before help arrived, including children. The Therian government filed a formal protest claiming the Darwin's fury threatened their ships in neutral space. The incident made galactic news, with the Sovereignty Alliance using it as proof of human aggression. But the Caldari families held a memorial service and invited Ryan and his crew. An old Caldari woman, her scales marked with age, took Ryan's hand. "You came. When our government hesitated, when others looked away, you came. That matters more than politics." Ryan returned to his ship feeling the weight of command. He had saved 43 lives and possibly started a diplomatic crisis. He had no idea if he made the right choice. Back on Earth, the public debate intensified. News shows featured heated arguments. Protests erupted, both supporting and opposing the genocide prevention fleet. The president faced approval ratings at their lowest point. Dr. Linda Hayes watched the debates from her office at the Xenocultural Institute. She now taught courses on interstellar ethics and genocide prevention. Her students were young people who had grown up with Earth and space, who took humanity's presence among the stars for granted. One student, a young woman named Kate Chen, stayed after class to ask a question. "Professor Hayes, do you think we made a mistake? Getting involved with the Krell?" Linda thought carefully before answering. "I think we made a choice about who we are. We decided that some things matter more than comfort. But I won't lie to you. That choice has costs and not everyone agrees it was worth it." "Was it? Worth it?" Linda pulled up an image on her screen. It showed the Valorian children she had examined at Haven's Rest, their young faces frozen in death. "I think about these children every day. I think about how no one was coming to save them until we showed up. Then I think about the lives we've saved since. The Pelori refugees who are alive because we intervened. The Daxan colonists who weren't massacred because our fleet was nearby." She looked at Kate. "Is it worth it? I honestly don't know. But I know what happens if we don't try. I saw it at Haven's Rest." The next crisis came faster than anyone expected. The Sovereignty Alliance, emboldened by Earth's domestic troubles, launched a coordinated assault on 3 genocide prevention fleet outposts simultaneously. They expected humanity to back down, to choose peace over principle. They were wrong. Admiral Jake Morrison's fleet responded with overwhelming force. The battle lasted 3 days and ended with Alliance forces retreating, and the outposts held. But the cost was high. 4 human ships were destroyed, 217 personnel killed, another 300 wounded. Earth mourned. Memorials were held across the planet. The names of the dead were read on every news channel. The opposition movement grew louder, demanding withdrawal from galactic conflicts. President Helen Martinez faced her greatest challenge. She called a special address to Earth and broadcast it across the galaxy. "We have paid a terrible price," she began, standing before the cameras with the weight of leadership visible on her face. 217 of our people died defending outposts far from home. They died fighting for a principle that many question. They died so that other species could live in safety. Some say this is too much. Some say we